right? And instead I got to be out in this world, and I got to be sitting across this table from you, and I got to see people like you evolve and turn into what you've turned into, right? I went to the VOA every other week for like 8 or 9 years, and I take a meeting in there, and there's not very many people that I've seen come out of that, right? And it's really cool to see you come out of it. Maybe out of those 8 years, I've seen 20 people, and I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of people that were in there while I was going there. And so I feel like that's really cool, and that's why I do it, right? Like, I don't do it because of the funerals, right? If it was all funerals, I wouldn't do it. If it was always court dates and watching people go to jail and die, like, I wouldn't do it. It's because I see people like you succeed, and I've seen some of the most broken people get put back together again and live super productive lives, and I've got to experience that too, and I get to look at like this last Thursday was Thanksgiving, and I get to go visit my mom and dad, and they get to look at me with cheerful eyes instead of sorrowful eyes, right? They used to be so scared that I was just going to die. I was going to leave wherever we were at, and I was going to go out in the streets, and I was going to end up dead, or I was going to end up killing somebody. And my mom would tell me that she'd hear these stories about me, like terrifying stories, like not about me, like coming close to dying, but all these bad things that I was doing in this world. And now it's the exact opposite, right? She hears about all these good things, and I know I make my mom. I didn't mean to. I hate getting emotional. I laugh when I get emotional because I had this therapist that for the first 5 years I got sober, I'd go see him once a week. And I'd go in there every Monday, and I'd be like, he's not going to make me cry today, because I always felt like I was a pretty tough guy, and crying made me feel weak, but I was like, I'm not going to cry today. And I'd go into a session, and he'd make me cry, and right before I'd cry, I'd laugh, and so now it's kind of become a habit for me to laugh right before I cry. But my mom's proud of me, and that's pretty cool for me.
So I think I just kind of had an aha moment with you. Like, I guess now it makes more sense as to why you're so down to earth and relatable, because there is that side of you, that kind of sweet melancholy that can tell us, hey, yeah, I've been depressed. Sometimes I even wake up and I don't know what my purpose is. And it's interesting because on the outside, like what everybody else perceives you as, I'm sure I do, and everybody really, is this, you just, people wouldn't know that about you. You know what I mean? And I think it's really cool that you are able to open up like that and share, and I think that makes you very manly to be able to do that. So I want to circle back also to that statement that you said of not feeling like you have purpose and meaning. Like, is it, I mean, for me, like, I do a lot of, I've taken a step back from like dating and all this other shit that was like, I don't know, confusing my world. Really, it was for a while. Anyway, it was like just empty. It was just like hump and dumps, as I say. It's pretty crass, but let's just be honest. That's what it was. And so I was just like, fucking, what the fuck? Like, I don't feel anything. Like, unless I feel something, like, I'm not even, what's the point? Like, you know what I mean? What's the point? Wasting my time. So I just like kind of took a giant step, and in that, working this rigorous routine of working out and forcing myself to meditate, and really sticking to it and fucking doing it, and working my way up more and more time each time. Now I'm up to like 35 minutes, which took me, months and months to get to. And I've noticed, like, when I shut out the outside world and I'm just dealing with my inside world, it's like, I realized, like, that's where you kind of become connected to source, as they say, for lack of a better word. So for me, that's really been like, and I've always been a very spiritual person. I've always felt a really strong purpose, even in my shittiest of shit. Like, I've always just, like, ever since I was a child, felt like, I'm destined for something. I don't fucking know what it is. I don't care what it is. I just know that it is there, I'm like chasing this, whatever, chasing the dream,
Yeah.
But it's really, really, it's cool to see somebody have so much influence and power, and I hope that how, just influential and how much you help so many people. You really do. I mean, I'm not just, trying to sugarcoat or make this a cool show, Well, I am, but so I mean, tell us more about what is your spirituality? What is the meaning of life to you?
So I really don't know. Like I eventually went to college, and I went to the University of Utah and Salt Lake Community College, and some of the classes that I like to take were religious studies classes and philosophy classes, and it was like I was trying to dive into that, and I was trying to figure out what all this is, and I felt like I love, it's one of my favorite topics, right? I love talking about God, and I love talking about religion, I love talking about spirituality, and I love talking about these feelings that I have and these things that I've experienced, because I've had moments in my life that are unexplainable, right? Like I've had guns pointed to my head, and people have told me that person pulled the trigger and you still lived, and so I gotta like look at life in hindsight a lot of times to kind of place where I'm at today. If that makes any sense, right? Like in the moment, I'm just like, oh, that's just some dumb luck. Like maybe he didn't pull the trigger. Maybe he just stuck a gun to my head, But there's so many times like that have happened in my life, and some of them I've been the one holding the gun, and I've been the one that's pulled the trigger, and the gun didn't go off, And so I can't help but think that my life has meaning and purpose, and I didn't know what that was until, man, it's just been really recently, right? Like I've been working on the recovery soldiers for a long time, and it started out as an idea in my mind a handful of years ago, and it wasn't called recovery soldiers. It wasn't called anything. It was just like, man, I like you. I felt like I had a destiny in this world, and I didn't know what it was, but I was just like, man, I feel like it has to do with helping people. I have a friend that says it's about helping God's kids, and God's kids, to me, the ones that come to me are the drug addicts and the alcoholics and the convicts and the gang members. And there's this 12-step based treatment center out in Ogden called Valley Camp, and all they do is 12-step work. There's no counselors and therapists, and they try to get people closer to God. And I've worked in treatment. I'm a product of treatment. I went to treatment. But I see that there's a big hole in it, right? There just doesn't seem like it's very effective at all. And so I was like, I got to come up with a better way to make this shit more effective. Too many people are dying. Not enough people are staying sober. And so I started like thinking of other ways that I could contribute to it, right? Originally when I went to school, I was like, I'm going to be a social worker and work as a therapist in treatment. And I think that's great, but somewhere in my first year of school, I was like, no, there's enough social workers out there. I got to try to attack this from a different angle, right? And I felt like that was through spirituality. And I've had a lot of experiences since I first had this idea. And so one of the experiences was starting a regular traditional treatment center. And it failed pretty quick, right? Me and my partners had a falling out, and I felt, because some of my partners were some of my best friends, and I felt like it broke me into a million pieces, and I hurt worse than I'd ever hurt in or out of sobriety. I felt betrayed, and I felt damaged, and I felt like, because I felt up until that point that was my purpose, right? My whole purpose and meaning is to build this treatment center. And just recently, like 3 or 4 days ago, I realized, man, that if I would have stayed on that road, I would have built something that I wouldn't have loved, and that would have been producing these shitty success rates. And my God, my higher power, made it pretty brief. I was only in it for like less than a year, and gave me that experience. It pushed me into this other direction, and now I feel like I'm back on my fucking mission. It's kind of a trip. I love it.
So, I mean, it's really, really cool. So this whole entire show really, it keeps coming back to these very common denominators. Like what you're talking about essentially is that it was missing connection. That's really the gist of it that I'm getting. And in your search for, your own purpose and that feeling that you described was unexplainable. Yep. In certain moments. It's like, that's kind of what I've always been chasing, those God moments, whatever you want to call it. Those moments where I feel like I'm a spiritual being,
Yeah.
Again, having this human experience. But I don't know. I love that. I love that that's, what it always comes back to for you, that was missing. And so that's something that you've created. So let's talk about that. I mean, Recovery Soldiers it's a community of people who are, I've actually participated in some of it, going out and feeding the homeless and, stuff like that. So tell us a little bit more about the Recovery Soldiers.
So that's what we're doing now. We're doing these service projects and these events, and the whole purpose behind that is to build connection and community. But that's not that's a small part of what we wanted it to be. What we wanted to do is we wanted to start doing these things so we could raise up some money and get some attention, so we could turn it into what's called a therapeutic community. I called it a treatment center for a long time, but I was told not to call it a treatment center because it's not. Treatment centers are where you go and you meet with therapists and counselors, and you do some psychotherapy stuff and sit in groups. And therapeutic community is something different. It's where the community runs the community, right? It's pure ran, and there's some out in the world that are super effective, right? They're producing results. Like people that complete these programs, like 90% of them are staying sober, or there's one out back east where it's like 70-something% of people that complete these programs are staying sober long term. And traditional treatments success rates is like 5 to 10%, 10% on some of the best ones that I know of. And I feel like now that I know that, like I can't go back to it. I got to do whatever I can to raise the bar, and so that's what Recovery Soldiers will be long term. I want to do a 12-step based therapeutic community where somebody will come in and they'll live. I'm going to live there. It's going to be a 6 to 8 month program, or 6 months to a year long program, and while they're there, they got to connect with God. Right? I believe that the disease of addiction is a spiritual disease. Right, like kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous believes that it's a spiritual disease. I believe the same thing. I believe that I have some bad spirits and bad energies in me that kind of manifest through my behaviors and my actions and alcohol and drug addiction, and the only way that I can really fight it off is through doing good deeds, doing service, connection, being honest, stuff like that. There was a guy that helped out Alcoholics Anonymous way back when. His name was Carl Jung. He was a pupil of Sigmund Freud, right? And he coined this phrase called, I'm going to butcher it. It's a Latin term, but it's called spiritum e spiritus, or something like that. And what it means is spirit versus spirit. So I got the spiritual disease that's basically trying to kill me. The dark side's trying to take me over, and the only way that I can defeat it is through spirit, right? And for me, the most high spirit is God, right? So I use God, and it's hard for me to kind of explain to you what I think God is, because I don't really know what God is, but there's something that happens through by doing good things, being honest, doing service, helping God's children out, and when I do stuff like that, I feel like I earn part of my soul back.
And I definitely, just observing you and having worked with you and had that experience, it's like you are literally the definition of an anonymous person, because you do it, but you do it very anonymously. I mean, I've even seen you like with these big groups of people, and you're always kind of that quiet one in the corner. Like, it's really cool to see the community come together. And I would be completely fucked if I didn't have the type of personality that I have. I mean, thankfully I have the personality that I have, and I love to talk to people and love to, connect with people, and just push myself right in the middle of like the biggest crowd and just like, hey, what's going on, Thankfully, that aspect of my personality and being able to have a community that has welcomed me, in so many different branches of it, has really saved my ass. It's created this great cushion, and it is my therapeutic community.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we have lots of friends and we have families that don't have any idea what the fuck we're talking about right now. But
yeah.
But for the most part, like, the people that I really connect with are kind of like the vagabonds. We're just kind of like the rebels.
Yeah.
And we are the criminals, and we're the drug addicts, and we're the really shady people, but we also have the best stories, right?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So I want to talk a little bit more about how you mentioned, you mentioned God. You know God to be this very powerful being or spiritual connection.